Hello my friends and welcome. It is 10:15 Moscow time and I've just listened to the Putin's address for the nation about the Prigozhin's attempted military coup. As expected, Putin took the side of Shoigu, Gerasimov, of Russian elite and the majority of the Russian oligarchs. He said that the Russian forces were stabbed in the back because of the Prigozhin's personal ambitions. Yes, there is some truth in that. Putin is not willing to negotiate with the Wagner forces and he ordered to get rid of them. The problem here that he still continues to live in the parallel reality. He thinks that he can handle this with 25,000 troops, at least 25,000. And let's check out the military map update. So Prigozhin and Wagner army took control over Rostov-on-Don. Yesterday I thought that they have their base in Rostov Oblast, but they had it in Ukraine mainly. They crossed the border. By the way, there was no interference from the Russian FSB and the Russian border control for them to cross the border to Russia. They went to Rostov-on-Don. Yes, there was some of the shooting, but everything was more or less peacefully. By the way, they shot down one of the helicopters in that area because the helicopter attempted to attack their convoy. After they took Rostov-on-Don and the main command headquarters of the Russian army, Prigozhin went to the place to speak with the Russian command generals. He explained that they will not interfere into the military duties of those generals and they are still looking for Gerasimov, who was the last night in Rostov military headquarters of the Russian army. Some say that he is still hiding somewhere in Rostov-on-Don. After that, Wagner army went from Rostov-on-Don to Voronezh, and according to the recent information, Wagner's captured all of the military facilities around the city. So by the time I'm recording this video, it is their checkpoint. The next step is probably Lipetsk, Tula and Moscow. So they actually covered half the way from Rostov to Moscow, and at this point Putin finally woke up and recorded the address to people. So this is the Rostov-on-Don headquarters of the Russian army, the command center of the Southern Russian group. As you can see, there are tanks around. Those tanks belong to Wagner and those are the Wagner forces, soldiers, and they stormed the building. This is how it was happening, more or less peacefully. Guys wearing the green uniform, green man, right? So actually it is similar to what Russia done in Crimea in 2014. There was no proper command from the Ukrainian headquarters, from the Ukrainian army to resist against the Russian invasion. That is why our forces were not resisting. So here is the same scenario. But Putin now in his address said that he gave the order to resist. So we'll see more fighting probably. The normal day in Rostov-on-Don, some of the tanks and the cleaning because it's kind of messy. The most part of the Wagner forces continued their trip towards Moscow, but still they left some of the forces in Rostov-on-Don. I would say that for now Prigozhin still has lots of the chances to take the power in Russia. I don't know for how long he will take it, but he may do so, because the Russian army is mostly placed in Ukraine. They will be unable to stop the Wagner army. The important thing for Wagner is to continue. There is no way back for them. There is no way back for Prigozhin either. For him, it's the win scenario where he will get rid of everyone, including Putin, or a lose scenario that he loses his personal life. Because Putin doesn't want to negotiate with Prigozhin, the civil war officially had sparked in Russia. On this video you can see the Russian Mi-35 helicopter. It is the attack advanced helicopter, and at the same moment you see the helicopter over here and it went down. It was downed by the Wagner army. and you can see the smoke from the other perspective. Totally, for this moment, Wagner destroyed 3 of the Russian helicopters. But helicopters also targeted some of the vehicles of the Wagner army. This is Prigozhin himself personally in the Rostov headquarters, and those are one of the main Russian command generals responsible for the southern group of the Russian army. They argued a little. Generals said that Ukraine will be happy because of Prigozhin's action, and Prigozhin said that Ukraine was happy that the Russian army left Liman, Kherson and the Kharkiv Oblast. What he's doing right now is the Justice Parade or something like that. The Russian regular army forces and the Russian Rosguard also put some of the forces to withstand the movement of the Wagner army, but I don't see lots of the tanks, just armored vehicles that are actually quite easy to be stopped if they're going to use them just on the highways. One of the Wagner tanks just stuck in one of the gates in Rostov city. Interesting. So what's the main problem for the Wagner forces is this highway between Voronezh and Moscow, because it was blocked by the Russian army. The Russian army used civilian cars as their shield, so they created the huge traffic jam, and Wagner's obviously unable to move just across the cars, so they need to search for alternate variants or just cut this link and go to the opposite direction, counterclockwise, let's say. So far, Wagner controls the territories of Rostov Oblast and Voronezh Oblast. I call it the Prigozhin's kingdom, and as you can see, they took quite a lot of part of Russia under their control. The Russian regular army soldiers started to surrender to the Wagner. For example, here Prigozhin stated that around 180 soldiers surrendered. I think that Prigozhin started his actions a little bit earlier than he planned. I think that he overestimated the Ukrainian counteroffensive operation. He expected it to be very fast, as last year, for example, in Kharkiv region. And based on this down wave, he would be, I would say, more successful. He still could be successful in this case as well. Also, there was the information that financing of the Wagner army should have stopped in a few days. Prigozhin himself is a rich guy, but he alone cannot sustain his own army, so that's why he decided to act just right now. Some of the Russian soldiers who are fighting in Ukraine start to support Prigozhin. For example, those soldiers are from the Storm Z battalion, and they say that they will join Prigozhin's army. The Wagner channel stated that Putin chose the wrong side and it will be worse for him. Soon we'll have the new president. As for Prigozhin's support in general from the Russian population, I would say that he has higher rating compared to Putin, but still I am far away, so I don't know for sure. Right, we have the military map update. They colored this Rostov-on-Don in this purple-pink color or something, so definitely Wagner controls the city, but not the nearby territory. They also control the military airfield in Rostov. The next problem for the Wagner forces is that they do not have the general support from the Russian governors, let's say, from mayors and other politicians. I expected some support from the Russian oligarchs because there were some of the meetings between Prigozhin and Sechin, for example. In the nearby future, obviously we'll see if there is the significant force behind Prigozhin. I think there is. Again, the Wagner soldiers and Prigozhin choose their destiny. It is kind of the suicide mission at one end, but on the other hand, Russia has no army to resist. So the chances for them to take the Moscow is quite high, and we'll see what happens after it. It's very unstable nowadays in Russia. If somehow Prigozhin gets the power in Russia, obviously Chechnya will not hold in Russian Federation, all of the North Caucasus will start to collapse, and Kadyrov will create his own republic. Also, as many more Russian states, it could be like that, and this is the most fantastic and awesome scenario for Ukraine. For now, Ukraine is not attacking on the front lines. There were reports about our advancement in Bakhmut city or something, but according to the military map update, there is no movement. Russian generals try to accuse Prigozhin because Ukraine will use this time for the counterattacks, but we are standing still watching what is happening in Russia. Again, if we compare Putin's corrupt regime with corrupt generals and Prigozhin, I may say that maybe it's more profitable for Ukraine for everything to be the same, not Prigozhin taking power, because he might announce the massive mobilization in Russia, he might start the new war, the bigger war in Ukraine, because he's completely unpredicted, or he may finish this war, as I told you in my latest video. Well, we will see how it goes. Anyways, I'm gonna keep you updated with one more video this evening. My friends, now press the like